Hello and welcome. My name is Alan and we are back with more. The Prose Edda. Today we are going into the Gylfiginning or the deluding of Gylfi. So let's get into this. King Gylfi and the woman Gefgen. King Gylfi ruled over the lands now called Sweden. It is said that he offered a traveling woman in return for the pleasure of her company a piece of plowland in his kingdom as large as 4 oxen could plow in a day and a night. But this woman named Gefjun was an Aesir. She took 4 oxen from Jotunheim, and the land of the giants in the north. They were her own sons by a giant, and she yoked them to the plow, which dug so hard and so deep that it cut the land loose. The oxen dragged the land westward out to sea, stopping finally at a certain channel. The Gefjun fastened the land and gave it the name Sjaland. The place where the land was removed has since become a body of water in Sweden we now call Logren, the lake. And in this lake there are as many inlets as there are headlands in Sjælland. So says the poet Bragi the Ode. Gefjon dragged from Gylfi gladly the land beyond value. Denmark's increase, steam rising from the swift-footed bulls. The oxen bore 8 moons of the forehead and 4 heads. The hauling as they went in front of the grassy isle's wide fissure. Then we have 2. Gylfi encounters the 3 chieftains of the Aesir. King Gylfi was a wise man skilled in magic. He was amazed that the Aesir knew so much that everything went according to their wishes. He wondered whether this was because of their own nature or whether it came from the divine power of the gods they worshipped. He set out on a secret trip to Asgard and changed into the likeness of an old man to disguise himself. But the Aesir, because they had the gift of prophecy, were the wiser in such matters. Before his arrival, they foresaw his coming, and in preparation for him, they conjured up visual illusions. When he entered the fortress, he saw a hall. It was so high that he could scarcely see over it. And golden shields covered its roof like shingles. As Fjöldolf of Heaven says, Valhalla, Hall of the Slain, was roofed with shields. On their backs, they let shine hall shingles of Svafnir, Odin. When bombarded with stones, those resourceful men. Gylfi saw a man in the doorway of the hall. he was juggling short swords and had 7 in the air at once. The man spoke first, asking the visitor's name. Gylfi named himself Gangleri, saying that he had traveled over trackless paths. He asked for a night's lodging and inquired who owned the hall. The man answered that it belonged to their king. I can take you to see him when you ask him his name. Then you can ask him his name yourself. The man then turned and went into the hall. Gylfi followed him, and immediately the door closed after him. He saw the living areas there and the groups of people. Some were playing games, some were drinking, and some had weapons and were fighting. He looked around, and it seemed to him that much of what he was seeing was incredible. Then he said, all doorways before entering gaze into carefully. One never knows where on the benches enemies are sitting. He saw 3 thrones, each one higher than the other. 3 men sat there, one in each seat. He asked the name of their ruler. The man guiding him replied that the king was in the lowest of the high seats. He was called High. Next came the one called just as high, while the one highest up was called Third. Then High asked the new arrival if there was some more pressing cause of his visit. Although he was welcome to food and drink, as were all in the hall of the High One. Gylfi replied that he wanted to know first whether there was a wise man in the hall. High said that Gylfi would not escape unharmed unless he grew wiser, adding, stand forward while you inquire. The one who recounts shall sit. And that brings us to part 3, the Allfather. Gangleri began to question, who is the highest or the oldest of all the gods? High replied, he is called Allfather in our language, but in Asgard the Old, he has 12 names. One is Allfather, a second is Heron or Herion, meaning Lord. A third is Nikar or Hinnikar, which means thruster. A fourth is Nikuz or Hinnikud, which also means thruster. A fifth is Fjolnir, which means wise one. A sixth, Oski, which means fulfiller of desire. A seventh, Omi, meaning resounding one. An eighth, Beflidi or Beflindi, meaning spear shaker. A ninth, Svidar. A 10th, Svidrir. An 11th, Vidrir, which means ruler of weather. And a 12th, Yalg or Yalk, meaning gelding. When Gangleri asked, where is this god? What is he capable of doing, and what outstanding deeds has he done? High replied, he lives through all ages and governs all things in his realm. He decides all matters, great or small. Then just as High said, he made heaven, earth, and the skies and everything in them. Then Third said, most important, he created man and gave him a living spirit that will never die. Even if the body rots to dust or burns to ashes, All men who are righteous shall live and be with him in that place called Gimli or Vingo. But evil men go to hell, and from there into Niflhel, which is dark hell, which is below in the ninth world. Gangleri then asked, what did he do before heaven and earth were created? Hai answered, back then he was with the frost giants. That brings us to part 4, Niflheim and Muspelheim. Gangleri asked, what was the beginning, or how did things start? What was there before? Hai answered, as it says in the Sibyl's prophecy, early of ages when nothing was, there was neither sand nor sea nor cold waves. The earth was not found, nor the sky above. Ginun Agut was there, but grass nowhere. Next, just as Hai said, Niflheim, the dark world, was made many ages before the earth was created, and at its center is the spring called Heverglimir, which means roaring kettle. From there flow those rivers called Zvol, Gunthra, Fjorm, Finnboval, Slid and Chrid, Silg and Ilg, Vid and Liptir. Also there is Gjol, which lies next to Helgrund, which means gates of hell. Third said, first, however, there was that world in the southern region which we call Muspel. It is bright and hot. That region flames and burns and is impassable for foreigners and those who cannot claim it as their native land. Surt, which means black one, is the name of he who waits there at the land's edge to defend it. He has a flaming sword, and when the end of the world comes, he will set off to battle and defeat all the gods, burning the whole world with fire. So it is said in the Sibyl's prophecy. Surt comes from the south with the fiery destruction of branches. The sun shines from the sword of the gods of the slain. Stone cliffs tumble and troll witches stumble. Men tread the road to hell as the sky splits apart. That brings us to part 5, Ginnungagap and the emergence of Ymir. Gangleri asked, how were things set up before the different families came into being and mankind increased? Hai replied, when those rivers which are called Elevagar, which means storm waves, came so far from their source, the poisonous flow hardened like a slag of cinders running from a furnace and became ice. When this ice began to solidify and no longer ran, poisonous drops spewed out and froze into icy time, hoarfrost. Then layer by layer the ice grew within Ginnungagap. Then, just as I said, that part of Ginnungagap which reached into the northern regions became filled with thick ice and rime. Inside the gap there was mist and wind-whipped rain. But the southern part of Genunga Gap grew light because of the sparks and glowing embers flowing from Muspelheim. Then Third spoke. Just as coldness in all things grim came from Niflheim, the regions bordering Muspel were warm and bright, and Genunga Gap was as mild as a windless sky. It thawed and dripped at this point where the icy rime and the warm winds met. There was a quickening in these flowing drops, and life sprang up, taking its force from the power that sent out heat. The likeness of a man appeared, and he was named Ymir. The frost giants call him Aurgamir, and from him came the clans of the frost giants, as it says in the shorter Sibyl's prophecy. All these seeresses are from Vidal, all the wizards from Vilmid, but the sorcerers are from Svarthofdi, and all the giants come from Ymir. Here, as the giants Vafthrudnir says, from where Aurgamir first came, the wise giant among sons of giants. When poison from Elivagar splashed out in drops, it grew until, forming a giant, from there all of our clans have come. Therefore they are all so cruel. Then Gangleri asked, how did the families grow from that point, or how did it come about that the others came into being? And do you believe that the one whom you were just talking about is a god? I answered, in no way do we accept him as a god. He was evil, as are all his descendants. We call them frost giants. It is said that as he slept, he took to sweating. Then from under his left arm grew a male and female, while one of his legs got a son with the other. From here came the clans that are called the frost giants. The old frost giant, him we call Ymir. This brings us to part 6. The primeval cow Audhumla, Ymir, and the birth of Odin. Gangleri asked, where did Ymir live and what did he live on? Next, it happened that as the icy rime dripped, the cow called Audhumla was formed. 4 rivers of milk ran from her udders, and she nourished Ymir. Then Gangleri asked, on what did the cow feed? Hai replied, she licked the blocks of ice which were salty. As she licked these stones, the icy rime of the first day, the hair of a man appeared in the blocks towards the evening. On the second day came the man's head, and on the third day the whole man. He was called Buri, and he was beautiful, big, and strong. He had a son called Bor, who took as his wife the woman called Bestla. She was the daughter of Bolthorn the giant, and they had 3 sons. One was called Odin, another Vili, and the third Ve. It is my belief that this Odin and his brothers are the rulers of heaven and earth. We know that is his name, and it is what we call the one whom we know to be the greatest and most renowned, and you too can easily call him that. And that brings us to part 7. Bergelmir and the appearance of the second race of frost giants. Then Gangleri asked, how did they get on together? Who among them was the most powerful? The sons of Bor killed the giant Ymir, answered Hai. When he fell, so much blood gushed from his wounds that with it they drowned all of the race of frost giants except for one who escaped with his household. The giants called that one Bergelmir. He, together with his wife, climbed up onto his wooden box, and there they kept themselves safe. From them came the races of the frost giants, as it said here. Countless winters before the earth was created, back when Bergelmir was born. What is the first I remember when the wise giant was placed on the box. But we'll go ahead and end this episode there. Yeah, we are getting some history of the birth of uh, the gods of Norse mythology. And we see the birth of the giants. So, yeah. Gylfi's being given this explanation. So yeah, it's interesting. Now, what makes me interested is he planned this trip to Asgard as if it was a place not outside the reach of mortals. It's kind of similar to Greek mythology, where the gods lived on the top of Mount Olympus. And you think, well, they should just be able to climb Mount Olympus. So, while they're gods, they're beings beyond them, they're not out of the reach of mortals as we would think, as we would expect. It's just it's interesting. But yeah, um, Odin himself disguised is explaining this all to Gylfi. And you noticed it was kind of interesting. Hai, who was supposed to be the top god, was on the lowest of the thrones, just as high above him, but up highest was third, kind of like reverse from what one would expect, where the top god sits on top, but no, he sat down lowest. Yeah, it's interesting, an interesting start thus far. And of course, we see Valhalla itself, the great hall. It's covered with shields, indicating it's the hall of the slain, especially of warriors. But oh, go ahead and end this here. As always, educate thyself. Think, read, study, learn. Someone tries to tell you something you have trouble believing, ask them to cite their sources. I'll see you all in the next video. Until then, later.